Henry is dead. After hearing the news, I drank a whole bottle of red wine by myself. Feeling happy. Thank God. Henry was my husband. After filing for divorce, during the 1-month cooling-off period, he couldn't wait to take his mistress, Melody, on a trip. On the way, they encountered a mudslide. Out of all the cars in the convoy, theirs was the only one that had a problem. Henry died on the spot, and Melody is still in the ICU. I immediately had a lawyer inventory Henry's assets. That very night, his ashes were put in a box. Since Henry was at fault in the marriage, the divorce agreement gave me 2/3 of the assets. Melody often came to make trouble because of this. Well, now that Melody is out of the ICU, she gets nothing. In fact, she owes me for the ICU treatment expenses. I went to bed happily after finishing the wine. When I woke up, Henry's ghost had returned home. He was carefully curling up on the floor, calling my name sadly, "Rachel, it hurts so much." I wondered if I had woken up in the wrong position. I planned to go back to sleep for a while. A dream about my deceased husband early in the morning. How unlucky. "Rachel, am I dead? Is that why you can't see me?" Henry's voice still had the clear, youthful tone. It was like he had returned to his teenage years. I sat up in bed and looked at Henry hiding in the corner. His skin was pale, he looked refined and handsome, wearing a school uniform, with a red mark on his forehead. I was stunned. The sun was rising, and Henry, scared, tentatively poked his head out from the corner, thinking I might be able to see him. "Rachel?" he asked cautiously, "Can you see me?" I buried my head in the pillow, unable to stop the tears. Henry looked just like he did in high school, smiling at the corner of his mouth, casually ruffling my hair and gently reprimanding, "Don't cry, Rachel. You don't look good when you cry." Back then, he couldn't bear to see me cry. With his headstrong and proud personality, he always patiently comforted me whenever I cried, but a few years later, he changed. Tears flowed uncontrollably, soaking the pillow. "Rachel, what's wrong? Don't cry." I heard Henry anxiously calling by my ear. "I can't touch you. Stop crying. I can't wipe your tears." He seemed genuinely distressed. Just like when I was still a treasure in his heart. Seeing this teenage Henry, the hatred I'd been burying in my heart surged up, even stronger. "Henry, how could you so easily walk away and erase 10 years of love?" Ignoring his calls, I got up and went to the bathroom to wash my face. The woman in the mirror had a pale, gaunt face and empty eyes. I touched the reflection, stunned. Not at all like I used to be. I grabbed the fruit knife from the sink and stabbed it into the mirror, shattering it into pieces. I kept stabbing until my hand was covered in blood. That's when I snapped out of it. "Henry, I have to make you suffer like I did. Only then can I free myself from the woman in the mirror." Honestly, Henry didn't do many things to hurt me. He just didn't like coming home after marriage, was obsessed with work, and had an office affair with his secretary. When I found out, I called him, crying my eyes out. His voice on the other end was cold. "Rachel, can you stop being so unreasonable?" When pictures of him and Melody in bed were sent to my phone, Henry came home for the first time in 2 months. We had a big fight. In the end, Henry said, "Rachel, you're becoming more and more like a shrew." His eyes showed disgust, like he was looking at something filthy. He went home to pack his things and move in with Melody. Later, he let Melody come to provoke me after my miscarriage. Melody said, "Rachel, is there any point in keeping a loveless marriage?" The young and beautiful girl confidently smirked, her hand resting on her slightly bulging belly, a look of provocation. I was pregnant with Henry's child. The husband who should have comforted me hung his head and said nothing. He stood behind Melody, giving her support. It was like I had become an obstacle between them. Pretty ridiculous. I had a thick notebook, filled with memories of me and Henry from middle school to college and marriage. The last page, however, was covered with all the things Henry did to hurt me. 45 in total. From hundreds of pages to just 45 lines, we parted ways. I went to see a medium. The medium looked at the incense burner swirling with smoke and said, "There is a debt between you that hasn't been settled, so he remains in this world. That's why you can see him." I held the tea in my hands, steam rising slowly, and looked at my reflection in the cup. Finally, a flicker of life appeared in my empty eyes. When leaving, the medium gave me a stick of incense. "Light this incense, and you will be able to touch him." I thanked her quietly, and as I walked out the door, I heard her say, "Karmic debt." Because there was a magic circle inside the medium's house, Henry couldn't come in and was crouching at the entrance when he saw me coming out. His eyes lit up and he quickly stood up. "Rachel." Henry left the house with me that morning. When we reached the hallway, hesitation crossed his face, afraid of being exposed to the sun. In the end, seeing me walk away, he floated out resolutely. Seeing an unharmed Henry, I was a bit disappointed. If the sun had burned him, I think I'd be a little happy. I ignored the ghost following me, got into the car, and took deep breaths. Henry reached out, trying to touch me gently. "Don't feel bad. I wish I weren't a ghost so I could stand up for you. Rachel, I even forgot how I died. I went to sleep and woke up 10 years later, unable to protect you. Weren't you the one who hurt me the most?" The medium said that ghosts with lingering desires can't be reincarnated. His desire was me. So the day after he died, his spirit hovered around me. With a blank expression, I started the car, eyes settling on the incense in front of me. Looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror and gave a slight smile. "Henry, the one who told me you regret knowing me, died holding a grudge. For me. The ghost that returned is stuck at the time when he loved me the most. Henry, you're so hypocritical." I went home, took out the first aid kit, and silently treated the wounds on my hand. Ever since I lost the baby, I've used pain to calm myself down. Eventually, whenever I felt unstable, I would cut my hand with a knife. The sight of the fresh, red blood made me feel a bit relieved. "Rachel, your hand looks so bad. Does it hurt? Let me blow on it, it'll feel better soon." Henry's voice was hoarse, like the little kitten we rescued together years ago, small and weak. I pressed the alcohol swab hard on my wound without even flinching. "Even if it doesn't help," Henry still bent down and gently blew on the wound, muttering under his breath. "Haven't seen her in years. Rachel's so thin now. If I were still alive, I'd protect her well." I forced a smile, my palm aching intensely. "The one who hurt me the most was you." After disinfecting, I went to make myself some lunch. Instinctively, I looked at the ingredients and nearly started making Henry's favorite dishes again. With a sigh, I threw the ingredients into the trash and ordered takeout from my phone. While waiting for the delivery, I lit some incense. The aromatic smoke filled the room, gradually shrouding the coffee table. "Long time no see, Henry," I whispered. Henry's face, still looking young, hadn't yet matured into the decisive CEO he would become. Whatever he felt, he wore on his face. Right now, his eyes overflowed with pain for me, and a flood of pure love poured from his gaze. "Rachel, you can see me?" I smiled, though my face felt stiff from not smiling in so long. "Henry, I miss you." I weaved a huge lie for Henry. In this lie, we fell in love in high school, got jobs after graduation, and I married him. Our marriage was happy. He loved me like the first day, and I loved him passionately. But 6 months ago, he died in a car accident on the spot. I couldn't accept his death, so I sought out a medium to summon his spirit back. "Henry, as long as I light this incense, we can meet again." I gestured for him to smell it more. Henry listened to my long story, eyes red, and pulled me into his arms. "Rachel, did I really marry you?" He held me tight, something he'd wanted to do since high school, and now he finally could. His first words surprised me. I patted his arm. "Henry, loosen up. I can't breathe." Henry snapped back to reality, his eyes moist and cautious. "Rachel, does your hand still hurt?" After Henry's persistent bandaging, my hand was wrapped thickly. He smiled softly, dimples appearing. "Rachel, I miss you." Henry's soft hair brushed against my neck. Strangely, after lighting the incense, when I touched Henry, his body wasn't cold but warm like a human as I patted his head, feeling the slight tremor beneath my palm. When we were young, Henry didn't like me touching his head. He'd blink in slight anger. "Rachel, I'm a man. It feels like you're petting a dog." I'd tease him, acting all pitiful. "Henry, just a little bit, please." Henry couldn't resist my pleading, staring at me for a moment before sighing, letting me pet him. "Henry, do you love me?" Henry peeked out from my embrace, cheeks red, eyes full of shyness. "Yes, I love you." This time, I buried myself into his chest. Rachel's embrace smelled nice, mixed with a faint scent of mint, unlike his later cold and severe demeanor. "And do you love me?" he asked eagerly. "Of course, I love you." Listening to his joyful chatter, I thought, "Henry, have you heard of a gentle blade? Enjoy the happy times while they last." Henry's current state was like his high school years, the times he loved me the most. He stuck to me like glue, following me everywhere. When the takeout arrived, I went to pick it up, and he clung to me. "Stop it, Henry." He was blowing in my ear, tickling me. Facing the delivery guy's fearful expression, I couldn't even say thanks before he quickly walked away. I glared at him, and Henry shrugged, pouting. "I just want to be with you all the time." I glared harder, and Henry rubbed his nose. "Rachel, I'm so hungry." I took a bite of food. Since yesterday afternoon, I'd only had a bottle of red wine, leaving my stomach empty. "Go smell more of the incense." Henry stood still, pouting silently for a moment, then glued himself to me again. "Rachel, I don't know why, but every time I see you, my heart aches, and I feel an inexplicable fear." "My heart feels sick." Henry held his chest. "Really? I feel like I did something bad to you, so seeing you makes my heart heavy." I glanced at him. Honestly, I had a hard time being harsh to the high school Henry. "Henry, be quiet. You're disturbing my meal." "Okay," he mumbled lowly. At bedtime, Henry hesitated at the bedside. "Is it okay for us to sleep together?" "Then don't sleep. Ghosts don't need sleep anyway." The next second, Henry jumped into bed. "No way, I want to sleep with Rachel." Ghosts don't breathe, and in the dark, the only sound was my quiet breathing. "Henry, do you really love me?" "Of course, I'm 100% sure I love you." Henry kissed my cheek. "I've always wanted to marry you." I buried my head in the soft pillow, covering myself with the blanket. This was a sign of feeling unsafe. Henry held me tight, gently patting my back. His voice was soft and hoarse. "Sleep, Rachel. I'm watching over you." I am someone who lacks a sense of security. After I started seeing Henry, he'd call me every night and gently tell me one adorable fairy tale after another. The next morning, his voice freshly awake and full of magnetism, he'd say, "Good morning, Rachel." After we moved in together, Henry would put me to sleep every night. Bit by bit, I got used to sleeping in the dark. The next day, when sunlight streamed in, I'd be momentarily dazed. Henry would still be asleep, with the sunlight on his face, his skin smooth and poreless. I'd touch Henry's neck. He still felt human, just without warmth. When I applied a bit more pressure, he woke up and his eyes brightened at the sight of me. "Good morning, Rachel." Slowly, I'd let go, and rest my head on his chest. "Good morning, Henry." He'd chuckle, a muffled laugh I could hear but not feel his chest rise and fall. "Henry, let's go out today. We haven't had fun together in 6 months." "Sure, as long as Rachel likes it, I'll be with Rachel." Henry would nuzzle me, sending shivers across my skin. In high school, Henry was so gullible. He believed whatever I said, obedient like a kitten. We roamed the whole city, unnoticed by passers-by, which was strange to them but I didn't mind. Our last stop would be the tallest mountain in the city, our secret hideaway. By the time we reached the summit, it was dusk. I'd pull Henry to sit with me at the lookout. The mountain air would be chilly, and I'd wrap my clothes tighter. As the sun set, casting a glow over the stars, the world grew late, and autumn embraced the landscape. Henry's bright eyes would hold my wrist with his cold, large hand. I'd look at him, the sunset warming his profile, deep black eyes gazing. "Rachel, in my memory, we hiked here just last week," he'd say excitedly. I'd rest my chin on my hand, slowly. "Really? It's been a while since we came here." Henry would go quiet, carefully saying, "We can come here often, but don't ever leave me." His memory anchored in the year he loved me fiercely, forgetting all his words of regret toward our marriage. He'd forgotten Melody pushing me down the stairs, the pool of blood beneath me, and how he shielded Melody. So much he'd forgotten. But I remember it all. It's etched into my bones, unforgettable. "Okay." I'd snap out of it and smile softly. "Henry, we can come here often." That night, coming down the mountain, I didn't sleep well. I dreamt a long dream. In it, I discovered Henry's affair again. Melody had sent their bed photos to our home. Henry hadn't been home in a while. With trembling fingers, I'd call Henry. One missed call, the second hung up, until the eighth he answered. His voice hoarse on the other end, so familiar to me. A post-lovemaking sound, with faint girlish giggles in the background. Taking a deep breath, trying to suppress the sobs, I'd ask, "Henry, when are you coming home?" Henry would click his tongue, "Busy with work lately, I'll tell you when I'll be back." "Henry." A girl's coquettish voice. Next second, the call would cut off cruelly. In the dream, I'd see myself with red eyes, sleepless nights. When the private investigator sent the photos to my phone, I just couldn't understand how Henry could lie so well. The woman he cheated with, Melody, was an intern who joined last year. I remembered Henry mentioning her name, saying she was a great talent with open appreciation on his face. The talented intern ended up in his bed. I couldn't hold back and confronted Henry with everything. Before I knew it, Henry had grown silent. When he knew I discovered his affair, his face clouded. "Why did you investigate me?" I felt miserable. I didn't want to cry, but my tears disobeyed. "Your infidelity is my fault?" He'd pinch his brow. "I won't agree to a divorce. After Melody has the child, Rachel, I'll return to our family." "Melody is pregnant?" I'd hurl everything at hand toward his head. "Henry, you're disgusting." Henry let me hit and scold him, but wouldn't agree to separate. Honestly, a part of me hesitated. After over 10 years of feelings, I wavered on forgiving him. In my anguish, Melody showed up. I was haggard, she was contented. She gently caressed her belly on my couch, eyes flashing with challenge and disdain. Before she even spoke, Henry rushed home from work, shielding Melody behind a barrage of accusations. "Rachel, I told you not to mess with Melody. She's pregnant, don't bully her." Melody, safely behind him, looked up at Henry with a pitiful expression, mouthing to me, "You lost." I lunged to hit her, but Henry pushed me to the ground. My arm bruised against the coffee table. Henry, who would have been tender and treated my wounds, now only showed a fleeting worry before standing morally superior. "Rachel, don't mess with Melody again." Their closeness was undeniable. I, his longtime wife, reduced to a joke. After that, Henry, emboldened, increasingly sided with Melody. Even when Melody lost the baby, he moved in with her without a second thought. That night, the moon was bright, just as lovely as on the mountain. Dragging a suitcase, I followed behind him, barefoot and frantic. "Rachel, how did I never notice how vicious you are? You can't have kids, and now you can't stand others having them either? I regret meeting you all these years. I'd rather not have met you at all." I don't know what Melody told him, but he believes I caused her to lose the baby. I tried to explain to him, but Henry just smirked. "Rachel, when did you become such a liar? Someone who's been in my life for over 10 years, taking up 2/3 of it, no longer believes me. He even refuses to divorce. Henry wants me to atone for Melody's baby. I'm drowning alone in this hopeless marriage." In my sleep, Henry woke me up. "What's wrong? Why are you crying so hard? Did you have a nightmare?" Henry gently patted my back as I gasped for air. The moment I focused, I instinctively pushed Henry away. Unprepared, Henry fell off the bed. His eyes looked confused, with a hint of hurt, but he quickly got back on. "Rachel, don't be scared. I'm here. I'll protect you." I dove into Henry's arms, sobbing softly, "Henry, I dreamt you died, but I'm here with you now, and I'll always be here with you." I lay quietly in his arms. "Henry, let's go on a trip." He was startled but agreed quickly. I had a travel plan prepared for our 10th wedding anniversary. "Let's do it this year." "Okay." Henry placed his chin on my head. "I'll always be with you, forever." The next day, I got on a plane to Santorini. On the plane, Henry smiled at me, just like always. In a small town in Santorini, Henry held my hand as we walked. He said to me earnestly, "Rachel, I'll never betray you." In a small town in southern China, we stumbled upon a Chinese wedding. The bride and groom stood on a boat, tossing wedding candies to the shore. I quietly picked one up and put it in my mouth. It was sweet. Henry's eyes showed a hint of envy. "Rachel, I don't have memories of you in a wedding dress, but I'm sure you looked beautiful." Finally, we went to Venice. Venice is a windy city, and our Airbnb was by the sea. In the morning, we could see the ocean from our window. In the evenings, we walked through forest paths. Venice moved at a slow pace. We climbed mountains together and ate seafood. Henry could only watch, looking aggrieved but cute. He'd forgotten. Henry worked busily but smiled faintly when he heard me speak. "So, you're the flower in my heart, the prettiest one, forever etched in my memory." I found myself smiling more and more often. A year into our trip, I looked at the messages on my phone. "Henry, let's go home." As we left, Henry looked back reluctantly, then whispered in my ear, "Rachel, how about we retire here?" I smiled at him. The taxi driver glanced at me in terror through the rearview mirror as I smiled into the air, and I gave him a friendly smile back. Henry got jealous. "Rachel, you can only smile at me. You're mine." I looked down at a thick notebook. Henry asked to see it, but I refused. "Henry, it's almost time. You should remain in pain." Just as I thought, Melody couldn't wait to show up. A few days after we got back, she wanted to see me after getting out of the hospital, but I had someone stop her. I also hired a lawyer to reclaim the properties Henry gave her during our marriage. Turns out, Henry was very generous with her. 2 luxury cars and several properties were in her name. I reclaimed the cars and houses, leaving her only with the jewelry Henry gave her. But she was used to living the high life with Henry and couldn't accept her current situation, especially when she was so close to becoming Mrs. Henry, but missed it all. Having gained and then lost, she was even more deranged. This time when she broke into the villa, I didn't stop her. "Long time no see." I leisurely sipped my coffee. This scene felt like 2 years ago when Melody came to provoke me. But now our positions had reversed. She had become the haggard one. Melody wore a mask, probably because she was disfigured in the accident. "Rachel, how can you be so cruel? What right do you have to take Henry's property from me? Henry never liked you. He liked me." Put my coffee down, a slight smile on my lips. "He likes you? Then go join him in the afterlife." Melody choked, her voice rising. She no longer appeared pitiful as she did in front of Henry. "Rachel, what's the point of holding on to someone who doesn't love you? Henry told me himself he doesn't love you anymore. And you're divorced, so his property should all be mine." I shook my head, looking at her like she was a fool. "We're not divorced. Everything is marital property. You're just a mistress. What right do you have to shout at me?" I was the one who stood by him as he grew, the one who helped him build his career. I had always wanted to say these things, but Henry always protected Melody closely. "If you keep this up, I won't let you keep the jewelry either." I glanced at her nonchalantly. "You can try." Melody bit her lower lip and said angrily, "No wonder you lost your child. You really are a ruthless person. You don't deserve to have children." I stood up and poured my coffee over Melody's head. Melody hadn't fully recovered, and when I pushed her, she fell to the ground. Melody, you know very well that my child died because of you. I won't let you get away with it. Melody's eyes were full of fear as she looked at me. I wiped my fingers with a tissue and said, "Good luck, Melody. Without Henry's protection, you'll be stuck in the mud." After all, such a vicious woman, apart from her looks, only Henry could possibly stand her. After Melody left, I sat on the sofa and shouted upstairs, "Henry, you heard everything. Come down." Henry's face was as pale as paper, and his body was trembling. "Henry, do you have anything to say to me?" He lifted his head in a panic, his dark eyes reflecting me, filled with anxiety. "Rachel, I didn't cheat on you." As if mustering up some courage, he grabbed my hand, frantically explaining, "Rachel, I don't know what happened to me later, but I only love you. I don't love anyone else. Please, believe me." I pried his fingers away one by one and calmly said, "During our marriage, you cheated for 2 years. With that woman who was just here, you insulted me multiple times for her. She got pregnant and had a miscarriage, and you blamed it on me. You moved out to live with her instead of coming back to our home." I tilted my head, slowly recalling the painful memories. "I asked for a divorce, but you refused. In the end, I was pushed down the stairs and lost our child." I looked at Henry venomously as he became increasingly terrified. He clutched his chest. "It hurts to be a ghost, doesn't it? It was your mistress who pushed me." I placed his hand on my stomach. "We had a child here, remember?" Huge drops of tears fell on the back of my hand. "Rachel, were you in a lot of pain back then?" My nose tingled. After a year of traveling, I had slowly moved past my heartbreak, but seeing the young, passionate Henry still made me tear up. It hurt a lot. I felt the child inside me die bit by bit. But my heart hurt even more. "Henry, during my hospital stay, you were always with your mistress. I was alone in the hospital. I tugged at the corners of my mouth, but there was one good thing: you were willing to divorce when I got discharged. Then, you just died. But how could you die so easily? You ruined our happy marriage, ruined the me who was full of you. In the end, you just left lightly. Luckily, your ghost came back. Living the time where you loved me the most, only to be abandoned by me. Just like how it was for me. You need to feel my pain before I can move on. No. Don't leave me. Henry, it's been a year, we've said our goodbyes." "Never again," I said softly. The light in Henry's eyes went out instantly. He began to follow me everywhere. No matter where I went, Henry would quietly follow, reluctant to leave me, scared of showing his face and seeing my disgust. I let him follow. I consulted a medium, who told me that ghost memories could slowly recover over time. When Henry's memory comes back fully, I have a big present for him. As Henry followed me, he grew weaker. Waking up to drink water at midnight, would often see him curled up at the foot of the bed, quietly crying. When he saw me get up, he would quickly run away. On his last day with me, I lit some incense. Henry floated nearby, looking like he wanted to come closer but was hesitant. I smiled slightly. "Henry, have your memories come back?" "A little bit. When they all come back, I have a special gift for you." Henry froze in place, clutching his chest. "Why does it hurt so much?" "It's like a big hand is churning my heart, making it empty, with wind blowing through it." Henry grabbed my hand, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. Can you forgive me this time?" I gently pulled back my hand. "Henry, I gave you more than one chance. Young love was too intense and we were together too long. To love Henry became second nature to me." I thought Henry felt the same. When I learned about the affair, I couldn't bear it. So I gave him 3 chances. Each time, I was the one left behind. Then I realized Henry was tired of our years of love. So, I began to slowly take back my feelings. "Rachel, I regret meeting you and marrying you. If I had known, I wouldn't have saved you. Rachel, why did you become so ruthless? I don't understand. Despite doing nothing, I became the ruthless person you speak of. From deep love to mutual hatred. Why did you think of me when dying? Why was your obsession with me? And still, you cheated? For a long time, Henry didn't appear in front of me again. But I could still feel his presence. Sometimes when I walked by, he would hide in a corner and secretly watch me. When making lunch, Henry would linger at the kitchen door to see me. He could only hide in the shadows. Henry's memory was nearly fully restored. I could tell because he clutched his chest more often and looked at me with increasing pain. In the afternoon, I was lounging on the couch watching TV. Now that I have money, time, and this pretty face, I can even keep a few young handsome guys if I want. My phone dinged with a message from the lawyer. I wouldn't let the person who killed my child get away with it. I called the cops. For intentional injury, Melody was taken away. But it didn't stop there. She's used to living large with Henry, sold all her jewelry, and borrowed from loan sharks. Now her face is ruined, she's broke, and she'll have a criminal record when she gets out. I even saved all the records of Melody provoking me and sent them to her hometown. She's infamous there now. I sent the lawyer a big red envelope and hummed a happy tune. The last revenge was for Henry. That night, I sat by the window, with a small light on in the bedroom. Henry, I called out. Henry appeared in front of me in the next second. He looked a lot more haggard recently. I propped my head up and looked at him. He looks like he did on the day he asked for a divorce. Mature and stern, but with lifeless eyes. Got your memory back? I raised an eyebrow. He struggled to speak. Regret it? I had so much to say to Henry, but after thinking it over, these 3 words were all I could give him. He suddenly raised his head. Rachel, the one I've always loved is you. Melody just looks like the old you. I don't know what got into me back then, like I was possessed. Rachel, the things I said were just to hurt you, to make you angry for how easily you asked for a divorce. As he met my smiling eyes, his voice got quieter. Finally, with a sob, he said, I love you. Don't leave me. Listening to him now, my heart no longer fluttered. You're the one who left me first. His eyes filled with tears of blood, looking like an abandoned fledgling, helpless but not pitiful. I was just a bit bored, but you've always been my true love, not anyone else. Melody looked like you, and when I cheated, you never thought of saving us, only of divorce. That's why I did a lot of regretful things. It doesn't matter anymore. No, Rachel, it matters. It really matters. Don't leave me. I love you. I sat up straight and said seriously. Henry, I gave you many chances to keep me, but you never did. Faced with temptation outside of marriage, I could stand firm, but you couldn't. I will meet someone I really like in the future, and who likes me. He will be all about me, and will have a child, and live happily. I chuckled, but Henry, that person won't be you anymore. Henry covered his eyes. This once ruthless businessman bent over, knelt, and started to sob heavily. I threw the incense in the trash, timed it right, and past midnight I won't see him anymore. I asked a medium for a charm. Once I drink it, I won't see him anymore. Henry, on the other hand, would be stuck with his obsession, seeing me marry, start a new family with someone else, and have a lovely baby. But not with him. That's the revenge I wanted. I leaned on the window and whispered, Henry, I forgive you. Goodbye forever. The final 10 seconds. Henry tried to grab my hand. No, Rachel, don't leave me. Just as he was about to touch my hand, Henry disappeared before my eyes. Forever. I clutched my chest, not in pain, just a little empty. I climbed into bed, this time without hiding my face under the covers. I fell asleep. In my dream, I went back to high school with Henry. A promising student, excellent in character and academics, always the focus wherever he went. I chased after him, and one day found out he was chasing after me too, and we naturally got closer. But this time, our schools weren't in the same city. The night the results came out, I said goodbye. Young love is passionate but doesn't last, and I was scared. Henry was stunned but accepted it calmly. High school felt more like a partnership. Goodbye, Henry said. I said bye-bye. Henry's epilogue. Henry received a notebook that Rachel burned for him. A thick one, he almost didn't dare open it. After Rachel threw away the incense, he couldn't see her anymore. Henry followed her, watching his Rachel shine brighter, like a withering flower regaining life. His heart ached. Clearly, he could have always been by Rachel's side. Henry held his head in despair. He was the one who left Rachel first, the one who hurt her. And caused Rachel to lose her baby. Also his baby. He had known Rachel for so long that he thought he didn't love her anymore. When he met Melody, that long-lost flutter came back. He didn't love Melody, she just looked a bit like Rachel once did. Henry didn't know why he let Melody bully Rachel. He saw Rachel's lifeless eyes, like a dried-up flower. Looking back, he didn't know why he said those hurtful things. Rachel just needed to lower her head a bit, and he would have come back. Why did Rachel ask for a divorce? The night Rachel lost the baby, he didn't show up at the hospital, he drank a lot. Drunk and in pain, he thought he no longer loved Rachel. After Rachel was released and asked for a divorce, he instinctively refused. But seeing Rachel's lifeless face, he felt heartache and agreed to the divorce. His biggest regret was that decision. He lost Rachel. As a ghost, he rediscovered his love, felt a burning passion, and his obsession grew stronger. The day the mudslide hit, his last thought was about his Rachel. Now, he could only watch Rachel fall in love with someone else. Henry is part of Rachel's past. But this obsession with Rachel, Henry may never overcome it in his lifetime.